What is going on, everybody? They said the perfect two-round mock draft couldn't be done. Well, boy, do I have something to show you here today. My first two-round mock draft of this season. It is going to be a full-on what I would do mock draft as well. I am super close to having my first official top 50 big board ready to go, which means I have watched I think all but like 3 players, maybe 4 or 5 players that we're going to talk about here today. So I have some opinions. May or may not look like a lot of the mock drafts out there, but this is just my opinion on what I think these teams should do. Trying to do the best job putting myself in the GM chair of all 32 teams. We will have plenty of trades today to make things happen, and it's going to be a ton of fun. So please do hit that like button as we get started. I really appreciate it. There's a bazillion mock drafts out there, so if you enjoy my content, those likes do help push it up the charts a little bit, get people to enjoy the content here on the channel. And of course, make sure you're subscribed, because going to a cabin with the boys this weekend for March Madness, but once I get back on Monday, we are pedal to the metal with positional rankings, starting with edge rushers. Hoping to have that video for you guys on Monday. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the draft content, including my live stream, of course, on draft weekend. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I am going to be using the PFF mock draft simulator here to provide visuals and to go through this thing, and should be able to explain some of my process as we fill out our picks. But just so you know, I did fill out all 64 picks on my own before we got started, so I know how this is going to go. But with the number 1 overall pick, I will be taking Cam Ward, and I think the Titans will be taking Cam Ward. We've got a lot of picks to talk about here today. This one has been analyzed at length, so we're going to just plug that one in. Then for the Browns at pick number 2, I am going to go, now that Myles Garrett is back, I am actually going to go with Travis Hunter for them. He fills 2 needs, wide receiver especially, but if you look at their depth chart, and nice thing about this is we can also do the screen grab on our lads and we can see some of this stuff. But if you look at their depth chart, you know, Martin Emerson struggled last year of his deal. Greg Newsome he struggled last year and was in trade talks. Denzel Ward's not getting any younger. I do think the grades on these players are pretty tight, and I'm going to take Travis Hunter to the Browns at number 2. But then we've got the Giants up at pick 3 with a interesting decision to make. So in the real world, if they don't get Russell Wilson, they're basically going to be backed into a wall and going to have to take Shedeur Sanders. I'm not a Shedeur Sanders guy. I've got a whole video about why that is. I'm not taking Shedeur here at number 3 for the Giants. If I had to risk getting Shedeur, I would be looking to trade down, call the league's bluff that nobody in this top 10 is going to take Shedeur, move down with Carolina at 8 or something, get picks, and then take Shedeur. But that's not the direction I'm going to go. I'm going to operate as though Russell Wilson is their quarterback. That feels extremely likely right now. So with that, the Giants have a very interesting decision to make. You could, of course, just take Abdul Carter. Yes, the best player on the board here. But that would mean you're essentially giving up on Kayvon Thibodeaux. And I understand it. I'd be totally cool if that's the direction you want to go. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you on that. But I do still think Thibodeaux has upside. I think what he showed in the second half of the year last year was actually really encouraging. I went back and watched his pressures. Shout out to NFL Pro. You can do that now. And I think he finally started to use his hands better, rush with some power, enough that I don't need to replace him here. If you want to, again, go for it. But thinking about the Giants here and what actually would be the best pick for them in this situation with Travis Hunter off the board, because I would love to get Travis Hunter for them, but with Travis Hunter off the board, I'm actually looking at Mason Graham here because, man, you look at this defense, you got those edge guys with Burns and Thibodeaux. You obviously have Dexter Lawrence, one of the best defensive players in football. You got good linebackers, Okereke and McFadden. Love the additions they made in the secondary. You got Adebo, you got Javon Holland now to pair with Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips, who were draft hits for this team. You've got Deonte Banks, still former first-round pick out there, kind of your weak link right now. Man, if you could plug Mason Graham next to Dexter Lawrence with Brian Burns and hopefully Kayvon Thibodeaux taking another step next year, that could be the best defensive line in the entire NFL. And I actually really like that pick for the Giants. And I have a top 10 grade on Mason Graham. I have a top 3 grade on Abdul Carter. Like, it's it's not taking best player available, but I don't necessarily view Graham as like a reach either. I think he's worthy of taking third overall if he's a bigger need for you. So I'm actually going to do that, and I don't really want to trade down either because I think the Jags are really eyeing Mason Graham as well. So it's an interesting thought. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it. It's not the end of the world, right? It's not going to derail this entire mock draft or anything. We know who's going with really the first 6 or 7 picks. But that's the direction I'm going to go for the Giants, and I'd love to hear from Giants fans what you think about that. But then the Patriots are up at pick number 4, and maybe weren't expecting to see Abdul Carter there available for them. And I do think that's going to be the pick here. Abdul Carter is just freaking awesome. No, Harold Landry coming in does not fill their edge needs. He's a temporary solution, as much money as they paid him. They don't really have any other edge players. I think for Mike Vrabel, you get the chance at a blue chip, elite edge rush type of player. You take that chance at pick number 4. As much as I love Tet McMillan, and you're rolling the dice that you're still going to be able to get a wide receiver later here, because that is, to me, above all, what they need the most is a real number 1 wide receiver for Drake May, obviously. But I'm going to go with Abdul Carter here, and we'll see later if that's a decision we regret or if it works out in terms of being able to get a wide receiver at the top of the second round. So Abdul Carter off the board at number 4, and then for pick number 5 for the Jags, I am going to take Tatora McMillan. A lot of discussion about him this week, running his 40, clocked in between 4.48 and 4.55. Doesn't make much of a difference to me. I still love Tet McMillan, even though there seems to be a split in the draft community. Some people see him as a mid to late first round type of guy. I'm betting against that. I think he's a special player. You can check out my breakdown on him in my wide receiver video, but you put him now with Brian Thomas Jr. If you're worried about the speed on Tet McMillan, talk about the perfect complement. I know they just signed Diami Brown, but that's not stopping me from taking Tet McMillan with the number 5 pick, especially with Mason Graham off the board in this situation. Pick number 6, I am going to stick with Ashton Ginty to the Las Vegas Raiders. That's become a very, very popular pick, and the way their free agency played out, I think, made that even more likely with him to go number 6. Then for the Jets, talk about this being a post-free agency mock draft, kind of telling us a little bit more about which direction these teams might go. The Jets lost Morgan Moses and did not replace their right tackle position. It has become probably their biggest need on the roster. I am going to take Armin Membu and continue to build out that offensive line that's low-key in really good shape after adding Membu. You've got Olu Fashanu, who they took in the first round last year, Simpson, Tipman, Vera Tucker, all had good years last year. You got a good depth piece in Josh Myers, but you look at that right tackle spot, Warren Carter, Max Mitchell, Chuks Okorafor, that screams to me they like Armin Membu, or maybe Will Campbell, but Membu is a true right tackle, I think, and just love that fit. So Carolina up at pick 8, running into the same dilemma I have run into pretty much every mock draft scenario where you're not able to get Tet McMillan, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, all these guys gone that would be ideal for them. So you got to kind of get creative here and talk your way through this. And yet again, they might like one of these edge rushers. They might like Jalen Walker or Shamar Stewart. This is me picking in this draft, and I am not prepared to do that. Those guys do not have the college tape and skills as pass rushers to come in as a top 8 pick, in my opinion. They're more late first caliber prospects for me. So what else do they need? They need a wide receiver, and I like these guys. I've actually got a higher grade on Luther Burden than I do on any of the remaining defensive linemen. Matthew Golden has the same grade as I do on, for the most part, on James Pierce and Mike Green, but those two guys come with some character concerns that with a top 8 pick, you got to be a little bit more careful with. So those are the two guys I'm targeting. Either Burden or Golden, I think, would be fantastic fits in this offense. But as we know, you don't have to pick them at number 8. So is there a team that would get on the phone and come up to number 8 for a Will Campbell or a Tyler Warren? And I'm definitely entertaining that trade as the Panthers, but of course I'm sitting in the GM chair of all 32 teams in this scenario. So who would be willing to do that here? Now, I don't know that the fans of this team will agree with this move or not, But the team I decided to come up with are the Chicago Bears at pick number 10. And this isn't going to cost too much. It's going to be obviously 8 for 10. And you're going to give them pick 72, your third round pick, and you're going to get pick 111 back. So it's a third, fourth round pick swap to come up 2 spots here. Bears and Panthers making another trade inside the top 10 of the draft. And the player I'm coming up for is Will Campbell. And I know Bears fans may not like that. They just brought in a bunch of players in free agency, right? Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson. Look, let me explain this to you. For me, Jonah Jackson was an adequate move. I just broke this down on my Free Agent Grades podcast. He's not a good pass protector. I'm not even convinced he's a great run blocker. He's had injuries. He was acquired because they desperately needed somebody. They gave up a day 3 pick and removed his contract. He's not a long-term answer. You also have questions if Braxton Jones, pending a contract after this season, is your long-term left tackle. Joe Thuney is 34 years old. So to me, I'm not done investing in this offensive line if you can get someone like Will Campbell, who is the perfect piece for Ben Johnson, to just figure out in time where he belongs. You don't always draft for urgent needs, but we know Ben Johnson needs a great offensive line for his system to work, to run all of the different run schemes they want. And a phenomenal athlete, a great run blocker, Will Campbell, is going to be really good at that. So I'm moving up a couple spots to secure Will Campbell ahead of the New Orleans Saints, who would very likely be taking him at pick 9. And again, it just costs a third, fourth round pick swap. Very curious to see what Bears fans think of that one. Then the New Orleans Saints at number 9 are throwing their hands up saying, dang, Carolina kind of screwed us on that one. That's another benefit of Carolina making that move, is New Orleans probably doesn't get their number 1 guy. And in this situation, I would love to move back, recollect myself, potentially capitalize on somebody maybe wanting a Tyler Warren at the top of the board, something like that. And I did find a trade partner again with this number 9 pick. We've done this in mock drafts past, but it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts, who did not get any sort of tight end help in free agency. Coming up from pick 14, and this is going to be a bit of a complicated trade, but we have this as pick 71 for New Orleans and 93 for New Orleans, going back to the Colts in exchange for the 45th and 117th pick. So what that means is the Saints are moving from the 3rd round into the 2nd round, but then the Colts jump from the 4th round into the 3rd round. So it pays back in the Colts' favor in the 3rd round, and no loss of total assets for this team, but just an opportunity for these guys to align themselves better in the draft. And I'm going to force this one through, and the Colts are going to get their star tight end that they've been looking for, Tyler Warren, who my pro comp, by the way, is Dallas Goedert, the perfect player to plug into Shane Steichen's system, who did a great job with Goedert in Philadelphia. Excuse me. Before we go to our next pick here, I want to thank the wonderful sponsor for today's video, SeatGeek, the number 1 ticketing app out there, always the place I'm looking to get my tickets at. They have the best user interface, the best prices. Just look for the green dots on the seat map. You know you're getting the most bang for your buck. I love how they have real imagery of what your seats are going to look like, so you know what you're getting into. Unlike some of the other apps out there, you will get the tickets right there in your app. You don't have to jump through email chains and different apps and such just to get your tickets and have this stressful experience as you approach the gate. There's a reason I buy all of my tickets on SeatGeek, and there's a reason I've been happily partnered with SeatGeek for a long time. Now, longtime viewers of the channel, because I've been partnered with SeatGeek for a while, you may have tried using my code in years past. Well, SeatGeek has kindly set us all up with a new code, TFG10, so existing customers and longtime fans of the channel can now use that code for 10% discount on their next ticket purchase. Or if you've never shopped on SeatGeek before for tickets, of course, TFG10 will work for you as well. So to support my channel and to get a discount on your next ticket purchase, that is code TFG10 at SeatGeek. And I hope you have a fantastic time at whatever game or concert you are heading to. But then the Panthers, after moving down a little bit, you picked up a little draft capital we are going to take Luther Burden at wide receiver. I think the hate's gone too far on Burden. I think he's a phenomenal playmaker, electric player after the catch. And the Panthers have playmakers, but they don't have a number one guy. Burden can also be a vertical threat in this offense. I love the way he plugs in. Very, very comfortable taking him for the Carolina Panthers, especially after the trade down. All right, the San Francisco 49ers, to me, free agency told us exactly where they need to go here, and that's going to be defensive tackle. The player I'm going to take for them is Walter Nolan. Shout out someone in the comments of my free agency grades video saying Walter Nolan was walking around in a 49ers backpack. If you follow the team closely, they feel very confident this is what they're going to do. That defensive tackle group is depleted. Walter Nolan as a penetrating 3-tech on that defense makes a ton of sense. And I like this pick too, but this is one that I would do, and a pick that I very much think they will make themselves. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys up at pick 12, and I have the other wide receiver, Matthew Golden, coming off the board. I think Golden is awesome. He stays home in Texas. Not that matters too much, but it's a fun connection there. And man, the Cowboys wide receiver room is low-key pretty bad. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, it's really barren, man. I mean, you've got Jonathan Mingo, who they traded from Carolina for some reason. Jalen Tolbert, who showed some flashes, but Tolbert can still coexist because CeeDee Lamb and Golden can operate from the slot. He plugs right in as a dominant wide receiver 2 type of guy. You get that. I mean, Dak has been at his best when he's had a couple of wide receivers to really work with. So I really like the fit for Golden at 12, and he's one of the best players available for me based on my own grades here. So we're going Golden to the Cowboys. Then pick 13 for the Miami Dolphins. This one I struggled with. I think a common pick for a lot of people is going to be Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle out of Texas. But I don't know that he quite has the athletic profile that Mike McDaniel would love for his tackles. He just loves these guys that can really get on the move, be reach blockers, but also pull out to the outside and be a lead blocker. It's a big reason they took Paul last year because he was such a good lead blocker at Houston. I think they would consider Kelvin Banks here, but I don't know that McDaniel would be perfect with Kelvin Banks. Would be a fine pick, but the player actually settled on for them is a guy I don't often see for the Dolphins, but Will Johnson at corner. If you look at free agency for Miami, they have a really, really barren cornerback room. You have Jalen Ramsey, of course, who is going to be 31 this season. He's not long for this team. You have Kader Koh's a nice nickel. Cam Smith has not worked out as a second-round pick. They're set to start Storm Duck on the outside. If you're not able to land someone like Will Campbell in this draft, I think Will Johnson's just a better overall player and fills a huge need at a position of value. Makes a ton of sense to me to put him in there in a system, by the way, that he ran at Michigan. This is the Mike Macdonald overall system that they're running in Miami. So Will Johnson will have no problem implementing there. Really nice fit. Then the Saints at pick 14, where they traded down. This is where I will go with the aforementioned Kelvin Banks. Very much fits the Saints system with Kellen Moore better than he would more of a move blocking system with Miami. More of a north and south blocking system where that athleticism isn't quite as key. But he could be a right tackle, he could be a left tackle, and he could move. I'm drawing a blank on their first round pick from last year from Oregon State. Fuaga, you could move Fuaga back to right tackle where he'd be more than comfortable. If you like Trevor Penning still, you could play, Banks at left guard. There's a ton of options. But for me, investing in the trenches for the Saints, getting that offensive line better, this is a great move for the Saints to move down, get Banks at 14. If you couldn't find a trade down partner, that's very possibly who I would have just taken at 9 anyway for them. But at pick 15, the Atlanta Falcons, this is where I'm going to revisit that edge room, and I'm going to go with Mike Green. It hit me when I was thinking about who might be comfortable with these kind of off-field character issue types of players. The Atlanta Falcons, did consider bringing in Deshaun Watson, who had all of those sexual assault accusations. That's Mike Green's deal, right? The thing is, like, with Mike Green, these were a long time ago. I'm not excusing what he may or may have not done, but the last 2 years, he seems clean. It seems he was young and made stupid mistakes and hopefully can be a stand-up citizen, whereas perhaps James Pierce, the reports are a little bit more about maturity concerns. It's tough to kind of speculate on all this stuff when we don't have the area scouts doing the dirty work, given the actual information to us. But I like Mike Green to Atlanta, obviously from a talent and need perspective, gives them one of the most talented players in the draft. But I think they could be comfortable with the background at pick 15, considering they were a team willing to make a move for Deshaun Watson with a similar status and cloudy past, if you will. But the Arizona Cardinals up at pick 16. I struggled with this one, but I'm going to go with Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. I finally finished his eval. I am a huge fan. I think he's going to be a potential Pro Bowl guard. He's got power. He's got awesome feet. He's perfect for guard. The length does hurt him a little bit at tackle, but you slide him inside, just as we saw at the Senior Bowl. He was dominating, maybe the deepest defensive tackle group we've ever seen at the Senior Bowl, and he was the most dominant player there. He had dominant tape at North Dakota State. He's a phenomenal fit for Drew Petzing offense. Drew Petzing's offense as a move blocker. There's just so much to like about Gray Zabel. And I look at this Cardinals team after they filled out the D-line. You could draft Jahad Campbell. That was the other player I considered here. But Arizona has a long history at this point of drafting linebackers in the first round. Not that should fully deter you, but for me, man, that offense just needs a little bit more juice and talent on the offensive line. Juice and talent is exactly what Gray Zabel has. Don't let the North Dakota State name brand fool you. He's very much worth the 16th overall pick. He will very likely be in the top 20 of my final big board when we get there. But interested to hear what Cardinals fans think of that one. Let's go ahead and move on to the Cincinnati Bengals with the 17th pick here. This is where I'm going to have James Pierce Jr. come off the board. The Bengals are another organization that has not shied away from character concern types. Joe Mixon, last year they took Jermaine Burton, so I don't think James Pierce would be a huge turnoff for them. And James Pierce is he's like bordering on a top 10 talent in this draft. Even if they do bring Trey Hendrickson back, you could absolutely use James Pierce. Either way, he has number one edge potential. He's a great athlete. He had more power than I was expecting to see at 245 pounds. Really was impressed by him. I think that's a really likely landing spot for Pierce is the Bengals at 17. Then we have the Seattle Seahawks at pick 18. I did some very interesting stuff with Seattle in this mock draft. I have them as a trade down candidate here at pick 18 with these wide receivers off the board, right? If we were sitting here and Matthew Golden or Luther Burden were here, I would run that pick up to the podium. Gray Zabel is also gone, who I love for Seattle. He's obviously not available. Emeka Ibuka is worth this pick, but you cannot put Emeka Ibuka next to Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp. Like, that is triple redundancy with slot wide receivers. So I'm looking to move down. And this is one of my favorite things I did in this mock draft. I'm excited to share this with you guys because I could actually see it happening, especially in this situation where the Cleveland Browns took Travis Hunter with the number 2 pick. The Seattle Seahawks, we are going to move to the first pick in the second round with the Cleveland Browns to come up and get Shedeur Sanders with the 18th pick. So let's talk about what the details are on this one before we analyze the pick. But it is going to be the Browns giving pick 67, one of the top picks in the third round, and a future third round pick to the Seahawks to move down to 33. And then we will go ahead and force this trade through. But the pick here is for Shedeur Sanders. As low as I am on Shedeur, for the Browns, this makes total sense. You reunite him with Travis Hunter. You create the most hype you could possibly imagine. You are also potentially setting up the opportunity to bring Deion Sanders in. Like, this is real. Like, this could really happen with Cleveland calling to move up, knowing that if they don't take him at number 2, there's a chance he's going to fall. There's a damn good chance he's going to fall. And you can make a move like this. You get a high floor quarterback that I actually don't fully buy the Deion Sanders stuff. I actually think Shedeur could run Kevin Stefanski's offense quite well. Man, what a fit for Shedeur to get all of that lined up for him, and for Cleveland to still get him after getting Travis Hunter at number 2. So I really like this move. Something I could actually very much envision on draft day. It just reminds me of the movie Draft Day, where they're like, make a splash. This would be Cleveland making a splash, but it actually making sense for every party involved. I really am excited to hear what you guys think about that scenario, and if you could see it happen in real life. But Tampa Bay at pick 19, very, very easy pick. It is Josh Campbell. This dude is a freak at linebacker. Perfect landing spot. You get to learn the position and the scheme next to Levante David, who did decide to bring it back for a year. Tampa's got some other bodies, but Josh Campbell probably wins that LB2 job and just learns right next to him. So he blitzes. He's phenomenal. You basically get the Devin White aspect of a blitzing linebacker back that I do think they've missed without all the other poor coverage plays and run defense plays. Like, Josh Campbell, at least eventually, I think can really be a complete 3-down player. He's a tremendous linebacker prospect. I'm not a huge fan of taking linebackers in the first round, but he is damn well good enough to do it, and certainly athletic enough to do it. So pick number 20, the Denver Broncos. I didn't hesitate on this one. It's a Marion Hampton to me. The defense is really locked and loaded. They filled their safety need. They filled LB2. They did really a good job in free agency. They added a wide receiver 2 in Evan Ingram. From this point on, you guys, I'm calling Evan Ingram a wide receiver. He's not really going to play tight end here for Denver, so maybe they could even think about Colston Loveland. But, man, you look at that running back room. I know they would be going back to the UNC well. I don't think it didn't work with Javonte Williams. They just got unlucky with injuries anyway. But, dude, Amarian Hampton is just a better overall prospect than Javonte Williams ever was. He's basically the same guy, but he's even more athletic. But Hampton is every bit worth a top 20 pick. He's a phenomenal running back prospect. Really locked himself into consideration for the top 20, both for me and I think for the real NFL, when he ran a 4.47 or whatever it was. So your defense is locked and loaded. You bring in Evan Ingram. Now you have a potentially dominant running back behind a really good offensive line. It's the perfect pick for Denver. Then pick 21 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am operating under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers is going to choose them in this situation. That feels very likely for me at this point in time. So for Pittsburgh, I'm going to focus on the interior of that defensive line and get a long-term replacement for 35-year-old Cam Hayward. I'm going to take Derek Harmon here. I thought about Kenneth Grant. You know, these two guys are very close for me on my board. They're just different styles. But I was thinking back, I feel like Mike Tomlin and this defense, they've never really truly valued like a oversized nose tackle type. They seem to me to really like the kind of flexible, 3-tech types a little more. So I'm going to go with Derek Harmon, who's a really nice player, defends the run, rushes the passer, and he will play next to Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward in, they can come out and run an odd front, 5-man front with Harmon and Cam Hayward as defensive ends, with Benton as a nose tackle, with TJ Watt and Highsmith. Like, man, you bring in Rodgers and the wide receivers and all this. If the offensive line is good, Steelers could be really, really dangerous. I think Harmon makes a ton of sense there. Then we have the Chargers at pick 22. This is going to be Kenneth Grant. They've got to be zeroed in on Kenneth Grant, man. I mean, they lost Poona Ford and didn't really replace that defensive tackle spot. The connections with Michigan certainly don't hurt, but I think he is the perfect player for that defense that does use a nose tackle position with a lot of odd fronts in the run game. So that certainly seems likely and would be a good pick that I would make for the Chargers at pick 22. But then Green Bay up at pick 23, really not a fan of how the board has fallen for Green Bay here. If this is me picking, I know people are screaming Shamar Stewart. Of course, he was in for a visit in Green Bay. He's totally Brian Gutekunst type. He would probably take Shamar Stewart here. I certainly will not be doing that. That would just be overly redundant with Lucas Van Ness. Like, why take Shamar Stewart? You got Shamar Stewart at home with Lucas Van Ness. It just wouldn't make sense to me. So I don't like the way the board has fallen. I would love to get either of the two wide receivers that went earlier. I like Igbuka, but a little redundant with Jaden Reed. I don't think he really fills out the type of wide receiver that Green Bay needs here. So I would get on the phone. And by the way, I'm just not that high on Jahdae Barron, you guys. I'm going to have to talk to Trevor about this because he's got him at number 7. I got a second to a third round grade on Jahdae Barron. You can call me crazy, but was not impressed by his coverage skills, like his physicality and his ability in the slot. But 23 is early for me on Jahdae Barron as well. So I would certainly be looking to trade down if I was Green Bay here. I would love Josh Simmons here, but them spending $19 million on an extra offensive lineman that they didn't really need kind of complicates things here. But if I had to stick and pick, it was going to be Josh Simmons. But is there a trade down partner, someone that's willing to give you some extra draft capital to move down and maybe target the guys you really need a little bit later in the first round? That's the direction I'm going to go with Green Bay here at pick 23. And the team coming up is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. We're trading with the devil, you guys. We know the Chiefs like to do this. They did it for Trent McDuffie. They did it for Xavier Worthy. But the pick here is going to be obviously 31 for 23. And then it's going to be the 63rd pick in exchange for the Packers' 3rd round pick. And then the Packers also are going to throw in a 5th round pick here, which would be, I didn't write down the pick number, but that would be 159. Was just going off of the trade value chart, and the Packers were a little bit over the Chiefs with just 87 for 63 there. So we have to include an extra pick there. The Packers still have 4 picks on day 3 there. So we're going to make that trade. And then Kansas City is going to be taking Josh Simmons, which is a great landing spot. He is coming off of a very serious injury, but this dude is a top 10 pick on film and is falling because of the injury. The opportunity for the Chiefs to roll the dice on a potential franchise left tackle that they have so desperately been trying to find for a while now. This is too good of an opportunity for the Chiefs to pass up. They will come up and get him in this situation. I love that for the Chiefs, and as we're going to see for what we do with the Packers here, I love that trade down for them as well. Then the Vikings at pick 24. I made this in my last mock draft. I didn't intend to do this again, but I'm going to go with Malachi Starks at pick 24. Brian Flores loves his 3 safety packages. They lost Cam Bynum, and they did bring Harrison Smith back. They did give Theo Jackson a 3-year, $9 million deal. They'd be willing to start him if they needed to, but with how free agency went for Minnesota, God, dude, this played out so well for them. Man, it's just they really opened up the window to just go best player available. To me, Malachi Starks very much is in that conversation at this point, if nothing else. But he also is arguably the biggest need for them at this point. Left guard is still a need. I don't know for a Vikings offense that runs a lot of wide zone is going to love Tyler Booker in this spot. But you look at the safety room, they did lose Cam Bynum. They did extend Theo Jackson to a 3-year, $9 million deal. Certainly not guaranteed starter money. Harrison Smith, though, is back for a year, and Josh Metellus is a free agent after this season, I believe. So it is a need, safety, and Malachi Starks is the ultimate can wear any hat type of defensive back. Brian Flores is going to freaking love having his versatility. It's a defense that really 3 safeties are viewed as starters in that system because of some of the nickel packages they run. Malachi Starks to the Vikings at 24 is a ton of fun. Then we got the Texans up at pick number 25. I'm just not going to overthink this. I'm going to take Josh Connerly, and if he needs to develop for a year behind Cam Robinson, who they just brought in for kind of a Band-Aid tackle type of contract, or if you want him at right tackle, left tackle, whatever it is, they need to address this offensive line. I don't think they have a single member on that unit that I would view as a long-term piece for them, to be completely honest about it, other than, maybe Blake Fisher if he can figure things out. But even Blake Fisher, who I liked last year, did not look good in his rookie season. So you need insurance on the development of these guys. You need talent. You need future pieces. After they trade away Laramie Tunsil, this becomes a huge need for the Texans. Then at pick number 26 for the LA Rams. Now, this is where Shedeur Stewart is going to come off the board for me. And this is where I start to get comfortable with Stewart in the late first, early second range. But, man, you thought you liked Jared Verse and his bull rush, and what it did for that scheme and those stunts and all that. Just take another nuclear missile of a bull rusher and put him on the opposite side of that and ask offensive linemen to deal with all of the other chaos that you've got going on with, their loopers of Fisk and Kobe Turner. And yeah, I know you've got Byron Young here. Byron Young is fine. You can find ways to still get him out there, put Shedeur Stewart as a 4-eye, use him as a disruptor. You can line up Byron Young as an inside linebacker and loop him to the outside. There are still ways to get Young on the field, but they do need, moving Young down to edge depth isn't the worst thing either. They don't really have edge depth. They have Nick Hampton and Brennan Jackson are their edge depth. I think making Byron Young a 3 is more fitting to his talents, as many sacks as he had cleaning up for that defense last year. So you just put another piece into this defense for Chris Shula to scheme up. You take a strength and make it a super strength, and he's a great fit for what they like to do with that defensive line. I don't know if Rams fans are going to love that pick, but to me that's the sweet spot for Shedeur Stewart and what I would do for them. But then the Baltimore Ravens at pick 27. This is where I'm going to have Jalen Walker come off the board. As a stand-up edge in that system, a team that could really coach him up and get him to unlock his potential as an edge rusher. That's much more the comfort zone of where I'm at with Jalen Walker, and I could definitely see him working out for the Ravens at pick 27. Edge is a huge need for them. At pick 28, we're going to keep this run of, physically talented edge rushers that are projected to go early, that I don't love as early as they're projected. We're going to keep that run going here with the Detroit Lions taking Mykel Williams. Definitely their type, a bigger-bodied, hard-handed edge defender. A thin room for them. They haven't really done anything. They did release Zadarius Smith, and I think schematically speaking, value-wise, position of need, very, very easy pick to make for Detroit there. Then the Washington Commanders at pick 29. I am going to take Emeka Egbuka here. I think he gives them a little bit of something they don't have in that wide receiver room, gives you just everything to work with for Jaden Daniels. I don't love a ton of the defensive options here for them, at least not stacked up against Emeka Egbuka. As long as you can find the right fit for Egbuka, who I do think is more of a slot player. I think Egbuka is a true first-round talent, whereas some of these other corners are more top of the second types of guys. But dude, you put him in there. Yeah, you got Debo. He'll play a little in, out, in the backfield, bubble screens, all that stuff. Egbuka is going to be pairing with Terry McLaurin, by the way, Ohio State. But can line up in the slot, run routes, get open quickly. Terry working the outside. While Debo does like to play in the slot a good bit, he's not the route runner and one-on-one winner that Egbuka is. So to me, he is kind of the exact missing skill set missing in that wide receiver room, and it really lines up to take him at 29. Then at pick 30, I've got the Buffalo Bills going with someone I really liked, and that is Benjamin Morrison. Now, I know he's coming off a hip injury here. This could just end up looking foolish, but to me, he's got real first-round tape, and he's the exact type of corner that Sean McDermott would love. Fluid, zone cover guy, but can also run press man. He's like a better version, frankly, of Christian Benford. So now you got two of those guys. That way you don't have to start Dane Jackson on the outside. You got a great cornerback trio. The Bills are a team that's always going to be picking in the bottom of the first. I like rolling the dice on a guy that you're banking on the health to get right. He had a successful hip surgery a long time ago. You're banking on, this is the type of guy that could go in the top 14, 15 picks in it if he were healthy. So you get a chance to steal some real star talent on this defense that they need to keep building up. And I don't really see that on the defensive line with this pick for them. So we're going to go to the secondary for them with Benjamin Morrison. Then the Packers, where we traded down, I knew exactly who I was going to be targeting here at 31. It's going to be Jaden Higgins, who I do have a late first, early second round grade on. The Packers would love him. Played at Iowa State, big-bodied guy, wins on the outside. He's faster than you think. He's a great route runner. I see a ton of Drake London in his game. A big, quick, reliable wide receiver. That is exactly what the Packers would need. Maybe even the type that they would consider in the first round. I know it's heresy to think that Brian Gutekunst would ever draft a wide receiver in the first round, but I really have him pegged as a guy the Packers would like, and you probably don't need to take him at 23, right? So you go down to 31 and get him. Then the Eagles at pick 32. This kind of sucks for the rest of us, but we're giving him Tyler Booker here. Talk about replacing Mekhi Becton in a hurry. Exact scheme fit for Tyler Booker, more of a north and south blocking scheme. God, he's just such a Philadelphia Eagle if he's there at 32, dude. He's just a better, smarter version of the former first-round pick Kenyon Green that they just traded for. But Booker's IQ on the field is some of the most impressive I've seen for a guard. They called him the Will Anderson of the offensive line for a reason. But then the Seahawks. Luckily, this is a 2-round mock draft for you, Seattle. But you come down to pick 33, and we're going to get busy with Seattle here. I'm hoping to not let you down after we traded all the way down from 18, because I know you see that and get a little nervous, but I think I'm going to make you happy here. So, our first pick, we have 3 second-round picks for Seattle now. The first one I'm going to make for them is going to be a guy I'm not crazy high on, but man, would be a good fit here. Nick Emanwari. The flashes of Cam Chancellor are ringing with all of us. Now, Emanwari does not play as physical as Cam Chancellor. I'm hoping they can get a little bit more out of them in a different role. That's the one thing I will admit on Emanwari, and we haven't broken him down. We haven't done safety rankings or anything like that. But, he's this freaky athlete. He's big. They played him top down from quarters alignments all the time. And he can do that. That's fine. He's a fine enough coverage player on the back end in that way. But I'm picturing him doing a lot of 3 safety stuff in Mike McDonald's defense that we know the Ravens, the Chargers, and a good bit of what we saw with Seattle last year, they want 3 safety packages. They released Rayshawn Jenkins, that big safety that is in the quote-unquote Kyle Hamilton idea. I love that idea for Nick Emanwari if they can really get him to play a little bit more instinctive in that position, but I also think he can drop back and play 2 shell types of coverages too on the back end. So I do think Seattle is a really nice fit to pair him with Mike McDonald. And now that we're into the second round after a trade down, I'm much more comfortable with Emanwari and his physical tools and his upside. And then the Giants are up at pick 34. I have plans for them, but I don't need to do what I want to do here at pick 34. Hint, hint, it's quarterback related. But I am going to pick up the phone with the Seattle Seahawks, who have accumulated draft capital to get a little bit more aggressive here. The reality is the offensive line options in round 2 are extremely thin at this point in time. There is still one player that I think would be in play for Seattle. I'm going to be a little bit aggressive to come up and get Ariante Ursary, who could be a long-term right tackle if Abraham Lucas can't stay healthy and prove to be your future right tackle. But I also think Ursary can play guard for you right away. And that is obviously a huge need with them bringing in Sam Darnold. So we're going to get a little bit aggressive there. Let's go ahead and execute the trade. So the Seahawks are going to give up pick 50 and 82 to come up to pick 34. That's going to be the trade. Very straightforward. Seahawks got a bunch of picks, but they're going to give up that little extra. And it's even going to check out. So for the Seahawks, they will be taking Ariante Ursary. And then the Tennessee Titans are up at pick 35. And this one was pretty simple for me. Gonna go wide receiver. Alec Iomanner, I think, is just a plug-and-play wide receiver 2. Love pairing him with a Calvin Ridley, who's got a little bit more speed and verticality. Alec Iomanner is just a reliable, really savvy route runner, quick dude, definitely fits this offense. Giving Cam Ward someone else to throw to that they so desperately need. I mean, Treylon Burks is their wide receiver 2 right now next to Van Jefferson, who got $1.7 million. So I'm very comfortable with Ayo Manor in this range. He's my top wide receiver available as well. Then the Jags up at pick 36. Colston Loveland is still there. I'm not quite on the top 20 train for Loveland. I like him. I don't Loveland him. I'm sorry. I had to do it. But at this point, definitely taking him. He's got so much more upside than Brenton Strange. This allows Strange to really settle in and fight for his future role as a good blocking tight end too. But obviously you lost Evan Ingram, you released him. Loveland has real tight end one potential. This is probably his floor. I do like him in the first round. It just didn't fully line up for that to make sense. But the Raiders now up at pick 37. I'm going to continue building through the trenches for them, and I'm going to give them Tyleik Williams, exact ranking of 37. That works out just fine there. But you now put him on that defensive line next to Christian Wilkins coming back, an edge group that brought Malcolm Kuntz back, and obviously has Max Crosby opposite of it. But if you look at their defensive tackle depth, I mean, you got Adam Butler. He's a good pass rusher, not a great early down run defender. Other than that, they got nothing on the interior of the defensive line. And Christian Wilkins actually isn't as he's a great run defender. He's not best as a true nose tackle. He's about 310 pounds. Tyleik Williams is. That's a hell of a defensive line all of a sudden, putting him in that group. And he's just plug and play. I don't know that he's ever going to be a great pass rusher, but man, you're going to be able to get guys into third down where Max Crosby can do his best work. Okay, the Patriots up at pick 38. So this is kind of worst case for the Patriots. They kind of got sucked into taking Abdul Carter up at, pick number 4, thinking, yeah, we can get a Jaden Higgins or a Alec Iomanor or, maybe a Emeka Ibuka at pick 38. Not in this scenario. I really like these wide receivers. If it's me drafting for every single team, all these guys are coming off the board. Now, in reality, if I'm not picking for all these other teams, one of those 3 wide receivers is probably still there. Some of these guys like Ezeraku, Barron, Scorton, like there's a bunch of guys that I'm a little bit lower on that would probably have come off the board by now. But unfortunately for the Patriots, you're sitting here and your wide receiver options all of a sudden are not looking so hot. But at the same time, you got to get some offensive help here if you're New England. But I don't think you need to reach for it either. I am going to pick up the phone and look to trade down. And I'm going to do a similar thing I did with Seattle, with a team that traded down in the first round, then coming back up in the second, trying to kind of take that capital they got in the trade down and thread that needle to really get what they need. So the Green Bay Packers, of course, being that team, now going to take their 54th pick and the 63rd pick they got from Kansas City in that trade, and they're going to flip it for the 38th pick, and they will get the Patriots' 4th round pick back in this situation. PFF says it has an 88% chance of getting accepted, and it is accepted. I don't know why I decided to roll the dice there when I could force it, but we did actually see the Packers do this when they had 2 second-round picks when they moved up to get Christian Watson. So not crazy to think that Brian Gutekunst could navigate the draft like this. And the player I have Green Bay trading up for in this situation is actually going to be Nick Scorton. Now, I will say, as we're sitting here right now, there's not been a peep about Jair Alexander. I don't know what's going on there. Are they actually going to keep Jair Alexander? I certainly hope so. I mean, it doesn't really save them any money to release him. He's still a hell of a player when he's available. So to me, I'm going to operate like Jair's back, and their cornerback room is complete for now with Valentine and Hobbs and the combination of Evan Williams and Bullard as well in the slot. They still have Keyshawn Nixon. I'm going to operate for now like they're keeping Jair. But if they did move on from Jair Alexander, I would be targeting probably Trey Amos here would be my guy, maybe Jahdae Barron. But I really like Trey Amos. But for now, I'm going to act like the cornerback room is good to go. We are going to address edge with Nick Scorton. Just raises the floor of that group. I still, think Lucas Van Ness deserves an opportunity to play and develop. But you can't really count on that here in year 3. Nick Scorton has a ton of pass rush moves. He's a big-bodied guy, can defend the run. If nothing else, you've got really a good trio there. But I am also intrigued by Nick Scorton. He's interesting because he dropped about 23 pounds from what he was listed at and played at Texas A&M. And he's a guy that wins with a lot of quickness. So I'm curious to see if there's some hidden potential there dropping that weight. And I think late first, early second is a really good sweet spot for Scorton and would definitely fit the Packers 4-3 system. Then the Bears up at 39, snapping their fingers that they didn't get Nick Scorton and the Packers jumped them here. But maybe not, because after we got Will Campbell early, they still get one hell of a running back in Quinshon Judkins. Man, I'm a huge Quinshon Judkins guy. I'll refer you to my top 10 running backs video, but to get him at 39 is plenty good value. And just talk about the difference in vision from Judkins, who I think you could argue has the best true vision in this draft, just in terms of pressing the line and consistently hitting the gap at full speed. You could argue has the best true vision in this entire draft. And you compare that to what they have in DeAndre Swift, it's night and day. So for me, that kind of is your lead back in this Ben Johnson offense. So at 39, we go Judkins. And then the Saints up at pick 40. With the wide receivers and defensive linemen that have come off the board here, I'm actually going to swing on some upside at cornerback and a really good player in Siobhan Ravel, coming off of an ACL injury, but the Saints have plenty of time to be patient with him, right? This is a guy that, had he not gotten injured in his final season, very much could have, and maybe would have, frankly, been a first-round pick. They lose Paulson Adebo. Alontae Taylor was terrible last year. They signed Isaac Yiadom to $3 million a year. Kool-Aid McKinstry is the only long-term corner here. I think it's a really good situation, especially if Brandon Staley is going to keep this job. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but Ravel ran a ton of top-down cover 3 in East Carolina, but a very zone-happy player. I think that's a happy landing spot for Ravel at 40. And then the Bears back up at pick 41, their final pick from the Bryce Young trade, although that was actually at pick 39, was Judkins. But anyway, this is where I am going to get them some more pass rush help. Donovan Ezeraku is still there. I'm still finalizing my grade on Ezeraku. I'm going to, after I record this, probably watch his last game of the season where he had like 14 pressures, I think, against Pittsburgh. So maybe that changes my stance here, but I am a little bit lower on him in a deep edge group to be more of a early second type of guy than all of this top 20 hype on Ezeraku. Again, we'll see if I end up there when I finalize the grade. But all that said, perfect landing spot with this Bears team, because I think their big signing on the D-line, Dayo Odeyingbo, he's the perfect complement to Donovan Ezeraku, who's a little bit more undersized. You can, at least coming in early, treat Ezeraku as more of a designated pass rusher, where Dayo will come in, play a hard edge in their 4-man front in Dennis Allen's defense on earlier downs, kind of the Michael Bennett role. Grady Jarrett will come off the field probably in pass rush situations. Dayo will slide inside, and then you bring in Donovan Ezeraku. It is the perfect way to utilize now those 3 investments on the defensive line. Hard to complain about getting him at 41. Just a hell of a draft for the Bears. I'm excited to see what you guys think about this draft for Chicago. But then at pick 42 for the New York Jets, going to add even more pass rush to that defensive line with Darius Alexander. Love him as a just 3 technique next to Quinnen Williams. You've got your edge guys in place, but they don't really have anybody else on the interior of that defensive line that scares you. Derek Notty's a good early down player, a good complement to rotate with Darius Alexander. Byron Coward's a depth signing. Leonard Taylor's interesting in year 2 as an undrafted pickup, but you now plug him in next to Quinnen with Jermaine Johnson coming back, with Will McDonald. You're getting after the quarterback at a really, really high level. He also provides some hybridity, for lack of a better term, if they don't want Will McDonald, very undersized, kind of setting a hard edge in some of their, Aaron Glenn's defense, they run a ton of different multiple fronts. They can take Darius Alexander, actually play him as a hard edge at times. Very multiple. They would love him. And I feel like Aaron Glenn's not going to care too much that he's 25 years old, but that is why he's falling into the second round for me. All right, San Francisco up at pick 43. We're going to stick with the defensive well here, only because, again, the offensive line group in the second round just is not ideal. But I'm going to have them going back to the Florida State well with Azariah Thomas. You just put him opposite of almost the same prospect from last year, more or less. In Renardo Green, you've got Diamador Lenore on a big contract in the slot, and your cornerback room should be set and ready to go for at least 3 years, because you got Green for 3 years, Thomas for 4 years. Really nice, I think, high floor corner prospect in this system. They know exactly how a lengthy press Florida State corner is going to translate to their scheme. I think fits them much better than someone like a Jahdae Barron or maybe even Trey Amos. Amos would definitely be in consideration for me there as well. But I just think you feel really good about taking Azariah Thomas to kind of replace Shavarius Ward there. It just really adds up. Then Dallas Cowboys pick 44 here. This is where I will stop the slide on Jahdae Barron. This is much more in the range where I have him second to third round. Perfect fit, right? They lose Jordan Lewis. I don't think Jordan Lewis is a bad comp for Jahdae Barron. Pretty good kind of press man slot type of corner, plays physical. I don't love him as an off-zone, sticky kind of corner out in space, but I do think it's the perfect fit. You go Texas, first couple picks. Jerry's going to love that after we took Matthew Golden early, and you guys can stop wondering just how far I'm going to have Jahdae Barron fallen here. But at pick 45, this pick again went to the Saints in that trade up for Tyler Warren. And I am going to go with Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher out of Michigan. Big fan of Stewart. I liked him a lot more than I was anticipating liking him. And rushed with a lot more power at 6'1", almost 250 pounds. He gets up and under you, can drive you backwards. He's got speed to the corner. He's got great inside counters. Really a nice fit with what New Orleans needs in this defensive line. You got, Chase Young is locked in as your 3-down player. You do have Granderson is a nice player, but I think Granderson can come off the field for some of those have it, get you off the field on third downs. You put Josiah Stewart in. By the way, the scheme is changing here in Brandon Staley's defense. Going to be more of that 3-4 style system where he likes some of these edge rushers that can drop into coverage a little bit more. Not sure they're going to love Carl Granderson in that new coaching system. So to get an edge rusher like Josiah Stewart, again, someone I was just really impressed by. I have a true second-round grade on him. Love this for New Orleans after the trade down. And after we just got a corner at pick 40 as well. But then Atlanta at pick 46. I'm going to go with Xavier Watts here, the safety out of Notre Dame. They have not re-signed Justin Simmons. Right now, DeMarco Helms is set to be their safety on the back end. They like what they have offensively. Xavier Watts, arguably the best player on the board right now, and fills a need. They just are missing that big spot at safety. Then with the 47th pick, the Arizona Cardinals, I am going to go with Xavier Restrepo. Back-to-back offense for the Cardinals after they really filled out this defense nicely. I would think about linebacker here. I just don't know that anybody's really worth it here in the second round. Probably more thinking about that third round. But think about how Restrepo plugs into that offense as the perfect fit. Think if you just took Amon-Ra St. Brown and just turned down the dials about 20%, but a big, fast, strong slot wide receiver with steady hands that gets open quickly, can provide some run after catch juice that they're kind of missing from their wide receiver room right now. Kind of loading up this offense to not have any excuses for Kyler Murray, giving him really every different type of skill set he needs to work with. Then the Miami Dolphins at pick 48. Definitely thinking offensive line in this situation after we went with a corner early. I go back and forth between Donovan Jackson here, who I have watched. He's a guard. He just kicked out late in the season for Ohio State. He's definitely a guard. But I could see Marcus Bowe, who I haven't finished evaluating. Did not think he looked very good at the Senior Bowl. But I do know he is a freaky, fluid athlete. He would be the guard that McDaniel would probably want here, and does have tackle experience to kick out there. So I don't hate that. The other guy would be Tate Ratledge, who tested very well. A little bit bigger. I really struggled with who to officially go with there. Cam Williams also is athletic, but I did not like his tape at all. At this point in time, I'm just going to be fully transparent. I don't have a great answer for who I would take out of this group. I do know that I have place rank concerns on Marcus Bowe. Have not watched Tate Ratledge yet. I'm going to refer to Trevor Sikkema's rankings, at least his most updated ones here, and take Donovan Jackson for the Dolphins. But as I get deeper into the weeds on the interior offensive line class, I might have better answers on who I would exactly take for the Dolphins here. But I do think in this situation you would target an offensive lineman, and it's going to be Donovan Jackson in this situation. But then the Bengals up at pick 49. I'm actually going to look into the secondary here. We got an edge rusher earlier. I'm going to trust that this defensive tackle group, you bring in TJ Slayton, you bring BJ Hill back, Chris Jenkins in year 2, McKinley Jackson in year 2. I'm going to trust that group can figure some stuff out. I'm going to look to the secondary that does have some questions, right? You got Dax Hill coming back from the injury. DJ Turner was pretty solid last year. Cam Taylor-Britt was all over the place and heading into the final year of his contract. Bengals have enough contract issues as it is, but Trey Amos is just super, super solid. Such a high floor player, incredibly smart. Just the type of corner that I feel so good about taking in the second round. Kind of reminds me of Jalen Johnson. Not eye for an eye in terms of skill set, but just like a guy that probably is going to get drafted a little bit later because he's not the fastest guy. He's a little bit tighter in the hips, but just, great reactionary quickness, great technique across the board, and would start, I think, for Cincinnati somewhere in that secondary at one of those cornerback spots. Then the Giants, where we traded down. I mean, you can kind of pick your poison here, right? You've got your choice of QB3 here at pick 50. I'm not in on the Jackson Dart round 1 train. That's probably the most reasonable pick here for the Giants at pick 50. So, I have the same grade on Jackson Dart as I do on Tyler Shook. I do give Shook the nod. I think he's the better player right now. But if you're more on Russ starts for a year, then we want more of a developmental option, Jackson Dart is probably the more logical pick. He's just younger. He's 4 years younger than Tyler Shook. So I'm going to make Jackson Dart the pick, but Jalen Milroe also getting some buzz off after his pro days. So, pick your poison. Whichever one of those three you decide you want to go with here, I could get behind, but I am going to go with Jackson Dart to the Giants at pick 50 after they traded down. Then Denver at pick 51. I'm going to keep looking at this offense. I really think this defense is good to go. One of the best players available left for me is Mason Taylor. Kind of a developmental tight end. Doesn't need to start right away. I know they added Evan Ingram again. I don't view Evan Ingram as a tight end in this offense. If they want to flex him in quote-unquote 12 personnel, that's great. But that's not really what they brought him in to do. I would wager he's going to play 90% of his snaps as a slot wide receiver for Denver. So I'm not looking at him that way. Mason Taylor, to me, has developmental upside to be a real full-time tight end for you. They don't really have that in the building. So we're going to go Mason Taylor at pick 51 and continue to get some just juice into that room. You've now added Evan Ingram, Mason Taylor, and Omarion Hampton. That's some firepower for Bo Nix to get cooking in year 2. All right, Seattle Seahawks up at pick 52. This would be an interesting Jalen Milroe spot. I would just throw that out there, but I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to choose to have some faith in Sam Darnold. Our final third-round pick here is going to be your DK Metcalf replacement, Trey Harris. I know they signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I don't think that stops you from drafting a wide receiver, a one-year deal for a 30-year-old Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But Trey Harris is a similar concept out of Mississippi. It's pretty funny that you're using the pick you got for DK Metcalf on him. But Trey Harris doesn't cost you $33 million. I do still think having that vertical presence in that offense is something they need with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp in there. That's why they signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But either Trey Harris beats out MVS or he takes a year to really get up to speed. One way or another, I think this is a really logical landing spot for him. And kind of my sweet spot on Trey Harris is like 50 to 70. But then Tampa up at pick 53. They had some success when they drafted the other corner that compared to Darian Porter's workout in Zion McCollum. We're going to take Darian Porter as a long-term replacement for Jamel Dean here. Dean turns 29 this upcoming season and has either 1 or 2 years left on his deal. Darian Porter needs some time. Even though he's 24 years old, he converted from wide receiver 3 years ago. He's been learning this position. Ton of fun to watch his tape. He moves like an absolute freak. You would have the most remarkably athletic cornerback duo anybody's ever seen. Literally, this is 1 and 2. Zion McCollum and Darian Porter. That's about it. So it worked for them the last time. It's going to cost them a little bit more than McCollum costed them the last time around, but does definitely add up for him to be a round 2 target for me for the Bucs. Then we have New England, where we traded down, and I wouldn't have minded Trey Harris for them, but he did just go. Unfortunately, these guys keep going right before New England picks. So looking at wide receiver, you did load up. You still have pick 63 in addition to their third-round pick 69. So you really don't need to reach on a wide receiver at 54 if you don't value these guys quite here, and I don't. But I do want to go offense, and where I'm going to go here is actually not my next highest ranked running back, but it is someone I think would be tremendously impactful, and that would be Travion Henderson as a offensive weapon type of guy. You know, a guy that has been, people have drawn comparisons to Jahmyr Gibbs. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs in terms of talent, but in terms of how you want to use him, exactly right. And I know they have Antonio Gibson. I know Antonio Gibson did some good stuff. Antonio Gibson's not the long-term answer in that role. Henderson is in this situation. I think Henderson is just more explosive generally as well. So really ideal number 2 back to Ramondre Stevenson, who's more of that thumper and gives you a little bit of juice. And, a screen option for Drake May. You can, put him out as a slot wide receiver and do some different stuff with him too. So it's not a wide receiver quite yet, but best player available in terms of playmaking ability to the Patriots at pick 54. And then the Chargers up at pick 55. So we went Kenneth Grant in the first round. We are going to stick with defensive line help for them. And I'm going to go with Princely Umanmielen, another edge player that I just was really impressed with. He ran slower than I was expecting, but he's got an incredible first step. He's got great bend. He's got inside counters. There's a little bit of power in there. But standing up as an outside linebacker, they very much have room for a third edge rusher in there. And Khalil Mack brought back on a 1-year deal. He's not going to be around forever. So some serious additions to that Chargers defensive line. Then at pick 56 with the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to stick with this defensive line run. Going to go Landon Jackson, kind of a developmental piece for them. Gets to kind of sit behind a like-bodied athlete in Joey Bosa. Lengthy dude. Jackson's still figuring out how to win, how to keep his pad level down, but does have a lot of upside for the Bills. After we went corner in round 1, that's going to be their best bet here at 56. I don't have any questions about the Bills' ability to find a guy, like you could think about like JT Tuimoloau, I don't, or Jared Ivey. I don't worry about the Bills finding thumping edge 3 types. They need to connect on some upside and find difference makers for the future, right? They're hoping Bosa can be a placeholder there for them, but I definitely think Jackson would be the pick if that's what you're swinging for there. Then the Texans at pick 58. I thought of this fit, and I immediately fell in love with it. Jack Besh to the Texans. So, I screwed that up. Sorry about that, guys. I can't go back, but I jumped the gun. Carolina's up at 57. So please use your imagination. We're jumping the gun. We'll just pretend this was flipped. But let's just continue down this road, and then we'll go back to Carolina at 57. Anyway, Jack Besh to this Texans team with the Rams offensive coordinator coming over, obviously going to have room for that Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua role, that oversized, over-physical wide receiver that can block, can run after catch the ball over the middle of the field. Even if and when you get, Tank Dell back healthy, he plugs in perfectly with that skill set in that offense. Jack Besh to the Texans in the second round is like a chef's kiss, especially at the end of the second round, in terms of value, scheme fit, need, all the way down the board. Christian Kirk's not going to be here forever, right? He's a Band-Aid until Tank Dell can get back on the field, hopefully. But yeah, sorry I screwed that up. I wish we had a redo button, PFF, talking to you guys. But again, Carolina is up at 57, and my pick for them is Andrew Makuba, the safety out of Texas. I also like Sebastian Castro for them as a fit, by the way, just to throw that out there. But I really like Makuba. I've got a second or third round grade on him. I have to finish writing up Sebastian Castro. I know he had a down year, so I don't want to quite put him in here into the second round at this point in time. But I do really like Makuba for the Panthers again. But they brought in Trayvon Merrick to, of course, help their coverage group and all that. But the biggest thing I said about Trayvon Merrick is the ability for them to close from the second level, not have broken tackles, and just have more speed on the back end of this Ejiro Evero defense. That's going to get the job done. You have two very fast safeties now on the back end. Makuba is a little bit undersized. He's going to have some missed tackles, but at least getting there and slowing guys down. But I think Makuba has more coverage feel and instincts than Merrick has as well. So I think it's a nice balance. If you do, like, they love to start in two high structures, but if you're going to rotate one of them into a free safety look, Makuba has incredible speed to do that. He can do all of the man match quarter stuff too. So I really think he's a fit in Avero's defense. He needs to go to a system where they don't need to play him in the box, either a split safety system or a system where they're just going to keep him as a free safety. That would fit the bill on Evero's defense, right? Evero really couldn't find a fit for a guy like Jeremy Chin, who was one of these box safety types, because he needed the opposite. He needed someone that can really be rangy and multiple on the back end. So I do think it lines up perfectly for what they need and the scheme fit. And I know Panthers fans are saying, we didn't get an edge. We need an edge. I agree. It's just, it didn't quite line up here for them. A lot of edges just went off the board for them. Could certainly think about someone like Braden Swinson, but I think you're just going to have to count on the veterans and getting Derek Brown back and just continue to fill out the defense with the best picks you can make. I think Makuba has a chance to be an impact starter, whereas the rest of these guys I think are more edge 3 types for you. Swinson, TBD. He's like the one edge guy left that I haven't watched. So if you really like Braden Swinson, you could definitely sell me on him at pick 57 to Carolina. But anyway, the Baltimore Ravens up at pick 59, and this was one of my favorite picks that I made here today. Derrick Henry replacement, Caleb Johnson to the Ravens. Derrick Henry will be 32 years old, and his contract expires. I mean, this is what we say about Caleb Johnson, right? He is someone that needs a few steps to get started, but does have that speed train ability. If you want to be able to transition away from Derrick Henry at some point and really not miss a beat, to use a late second round pick to do that on a really talented back who will be involved. If you are thinking about extending Derrick Henry, I know the dude is just Iron Man, but if you're able to reduce his workload and just continue to reduce the amount of hits that he does have to take by getting Caleb Johnson involved, I think that's a double positive. You get a long-term replacement and extend the window on Derrick Henry in the meantime. So really excited to hear if Ravens fans have thought about this one as a fit at the end of the second round. Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, Detroit Lions up at pick number 60. I really wanted to give them Cam Scatterbo because he just screams Detroit Lion, and frankly, Dan Campbell might just do it anyway, even though he might not play that much for a couple years, as David Montgomery's still the guy. I will say Montgomery started to get banged up at the end of the year, getting a little bit more up there in age and tread on the tires. So I would totally get behind Cam Scatabo here. I originally had that, but I am actually going to pivot and go with Tate Ratledge out of Georgia. You have Christian Mahogany set to start at right guard, but fell in the draft because of durability concerns. And at left guard, I mean, frickin' what's his name? Graham Glasgow was really bad last year. So, Ratledge might not start right away, but he's really athletic. I think after you lose Zeitler, getting some more talent and youth and developmental pieces in that group makes sense for Detroit that doesn't want to see that group deteriorate. So we're going to go Tate Ratledge for them out of Georgia. Then the Commanders at pick 61. I'm going to go with Maxwell Harrison here. Get them some developmental young cornerback depth for now. They have Jonathan Jones, who can be a great mentor for Harrison. Jones came in basically all speed into the league and had to figure things out. That's kind of where Harrison's at right now. But also Marshawn Lattimore, very much to be determined on him. You like what you have in Mikey Sainer still, but definitely an older cornerback room that needs some depth for injury insurance for sure. Both Jones and Harrison would almost certainly play at some point this season between both those guys. Jones and Lattimore have both missed a lot of games over the last few years, but certainly for a long-term option makes a ton of sense to go Harrison. Then the Bills up at pick 62. I am looking at this interior defensive line group, and I'm still finishing out the evals on Shamar Turner and Alfred Collins. I'm lightly familiar with these guys. I'm not taking TJ Sanders here. I think they have enough of those kind of light penetrator types. I think Alfred Collins would be more of your Daquan Jones replacement as a good 3-down type of defensive tackle, kind of the full-size piece there. And this one's less of a kind of slam dunk, or not even slam dunk, but like shooting for the fences type of pick like a Landon Jackson. This one's more of like raising the floor, so it's a nice balance. People always ask me, do you prefer to draft the raw developmental guys or the higher floor players? And I think it's always a balance in situations like this. It's a good example of mixing things up like that. So the defensive line for the Bills is in much better shape at the defense in general because we got Benjamin Morrison in the first round as well. Then the New England Patriots up at 63. Definitely thinking about this offense, right? Wide receiver, we do still have pick 70. Where is it? 69. We pick again in like 5 more picks. There's a couple wide receivers I like for them. I like Knoll. I like Royals. I was scared to take Knoll here because I didn't want to deal with Patriots fans getting mad at me for replacing Demario Douglas, because I do like Demario Douglas, but I think Knoll would be an upgrade there. But I think there's a decent chance Knoll could be there with that, what do we say, 69th pick? Sorry, I know I just said it. 69th pick. I also don't hate the idea of rolling the dice on Isaiah Bond in the 3rd round. That's where his athleticism starts to become a value. You got guys like Kyle Williams, Kobe Hudson are much more in play in the 3rd round, Jalen Royals. So that would probably be, like, there's enough guys that I think it's kind of a mishmash of, pick your poison at pick 69, and maybe it'd be smart to double dip there, but the offensive line needs some love too. And I'm going to go ahead and take Anthony Belton out of NC State. I do think this is the type of tackle that they've had success with, and I say they because you're bringing Josh McDaniels back. It is very much a north and south blocking scheme, so I think back to like Trent Brown was someone that was his tackle. Anthony Belton's not dislike a Trent Brown, Orlando Brown type, so I think could start at left tackle, where he looked comfortable to me at the Senior Bowl, but could be a long-term guard for you as well, as they're trying to figure out this left guard spot. They brought in Bradbury, Strange, Layden Robinson, just continue to add talent to that group and endorse competition. But then the Eagles up at pick 64. At this point, why not give this offense a little bit of something they don't have? Isaiah Bond out of Texas. They're going to populate the final sheet here, but it's a good spot where he can come in and be used as a gadget player and a slot wide receiver right away. Jahan Dotson has 1 year left on that contract. I don't imagine he's going to be someone that comes back. He's probably going to want to go get an opportunity as a real starter somewhere. But yeah, man, Bond provides verticality, he provides just different creative ways to get you the ball. He can return kicks and just kind of learn how to play football, because right now, you know, he played some corner for some time. He's had drop issues. He needs to go somewhere where he can't really, you know, he's not going to start right away. But it's about the range I'm thinking about Isaiah Bond, and I could see that being a kind of a luxury pick of sorts for the Eagles that eventually pays dividends 2-3 years down the road. But there you have it. There is your full 2-round mock draft. I want to hear all of it from you guys. The picks you hate, the picks you love, the picks you could see happening in real life, which players I'm crazy on for letting slide in what was very much a what I would do mock draft type of situation. Beyond that, please do just hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed for more draft content heading your way. I appreciate you all for watching. It means a lot. And there's a lot of mock drafts out there to watch, so thank you for choosing mine. But until our next video, which will be the positional rankings on the Edge group, I am out of here, and we'll see you later. Peace out.